Back in 2018, Alex Smith suffered one of the most gruesome injuries we've seen in the NFL. He ended up developing a flesh-eating bacteria that led to the consideration of amputating his right leg in an attempt to save his life. Smith had 17 surgeries over 9 months and nearly lost his life, but somehow, 367 days after suffering an unexpected career-ending injury, he was activated and practiced for the Washington football team. We've never seen anything quite like the miraculous recovery of Alex Smith. He went from near death to returning to the gridiron, and this is his story. Before we jump into Alex Smith, I'd like to take a second to acknowledge that the majority of our viewers aren't subscribed to the channel. Darren and I are both college students and hope to one day make this our full-time job. So please, if you do enjoy, consider subscribing and helping us on our journey here on YouTube. Thank you and enjoy the video. Alex Smith was finding success in his first season with the Washington Redskins in 2018 after recently being traded by the Kansas City Chiefs. He was never necessarily a star in the NFL, but did go first overall to the San Francisco 49ers at the 2005 NFL Draft after playing at Utah under Urban Meyer. He had a rocky start with the 49ers thanks to injuries and a bad team, but did hit a bit of a stride before he was traded after Colin Kaepernick took over for the team following another Smith injury. The peak of his career was arguably in Kansas City, where he led the league in passer rating in 2017 and made the Pro Bowl 3 times. Things were going pretty well for Smith in Kansas City, but he was abruptly traded ahead of the 2018 season. He had early success in Washington, and the future looks pretty good, but disaster was ahead. On November 18th, 2018, the Redskins sat at 6-3 behind starting quarterback Alex Smith, ahead of a home game against the Texans. Midway through the third quarter, Smith dropped back to pass before he was pressured and sacked by Kareem Jackson and J.J. Watt. Smith remained on the ground after the play before laying on his back and lifting his jersey over his head in agony. He ended up suffering a spiral and compound fracture to his tibia and fibula in his right leg. It was thought to be a gruesome injury and potentially impact whether Smith would ever play again, but that was only the beginning. He underwent emergency surgery on his leg due to his bone sticking out, a procedure that led to him developing necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria that has a mortality rate of about 30%. This resulted in Smith suffering from sepsis, blood poisoning that arises due to an infection. It causes injury to one's tissues and organs and has a 10 to 80% risk of death. Due to the unfavorable rate of survival for his conditions, doctors suggested the amputation of his leg would be his best option to live. Over 9 months, Smith had 17 surgeries, including 8 debridements, which is the removal of tissue. Doctors ultimately utilized a skin graft, transplantation of skin, and transferred muscle from his left quadriceps to his leg in order to successfully save his leg. Even after Smith was able to get past the worry of losing his leg, there was still a long way to go. He had to wear an external fixation device, a structure that involves rods being screwed into the bone for about a year. Obviously, nobody ever believed that Smith would be able to make any kind of return to the gridiron. He spent 2019 on the physically unable to perform list, but miraculously, he announced that he was intending to play football in 2020. In July, he was officially cleared by doctors to resume football activities. Smith was officially activated by Washington on August 16th, 2020, prompting this great video of his family celebrating that has been circulating on social media as a nice feel-good moment. 637 days after suffering his injury that resulted in life-threatening conditions, he found himself on Washington's active roster and practiced with the team. Alex Smith's entire recovery process is shown in Project 11, an ESPN E60 documentary that aired on May 1st. Project 11 gives us an in-depth look at Smith's road to recovery and just how life-threatening his injuries became and how it affected his family. It shows that Smith was able to get treatment at the San Antonio Military Medical Center due to the extreme nature of his injury. Early in the beginning of the program, one of the military doctors told him this could easily have gone dead leg, dead patient in a heartbeat, immediately giving us the sense of how serious his situation was. It was supposed to be a bad injury to his leg that would hinder his football career, but it was instead about saving his life, whether or not that meant keeping his leg. Smith said at one point that the injury was bigger than football and about life and whether or not he'd be able to play with his kids again. There are plenty of pictures that were flashed up during the documentary. We won't show them because YouTube will probably demonetize us if we do, but it should only take a quick Google search and you can find them if you wish. The photos are literally at some points looking at his leg without skin. In the early process, the leg was literally black due to dead skin and muscle tissue. The product after infection was a leg that had lost almost all muscle from his knee down to his ankle. One of the biggest themes in the documentary is Alex Smith's overwhelming positivity and overall drive to want to return to normal life. There are two moments shown that give us a true look at Smith's character. My overall favorite quote from the documentary is from his former 49ers head coach Jim Harbaugh, who said,
"Alex Smith is as tough as a $2 steak."
Seth Blee, Smith's physical therapist, also talked about his daily mood and said, "The most impressive thing with Alex from day one has been his outlook. I've never seen him in a bad mood." And it sounds like that was true. Somehow, Smith was never in a bad mood. His wife even talked about how she was sitting in his hospital room at one point and he turned to her and said, "Do you know how many people would love to trade positions with me? Do you know the things and the blessings we have? And we can't take it for granted, not even for a minute." It's wild. Despite going through hell, Smith continued to be positive, even in the darkest of times. It's a true testament to who he is as a person, and honestly, how he was able to get through it. There are a number of monumental goals that he reaches, most notably when he picks up a football for the first time. Long into his recovery, he's shown doing exercises before picking up a football for the first time since the injury, and he throws it. It was a monumental moment, and it felt like the true "he's back" feeling. It was a really emotional moment. Smith has looked capable of playing during the videos we've seen of him at training camp so far. It still feels hard though to see him playing again. In Project 11, a doctor breaks down the process of taking muscle from his quadriceps and putting it into his right leg. He then goes on to say that without any assistance or intervention, Smith won't be able to lift up his ankle on his own. Smith certainly has a shot, and it's incredible that we're even discussing whether or not he has a chance to return at this point. Regardless, his presence in the Washington locker room is a major plus, especially for second-year Dwayne Haskins, who will benefit from his presence greatly. We all know his assistance in the development of Patrick Mahomes, and well, he's been pretty good if I'd say so myself. Watching the recovery of Alex Smith has been bittersweet. Part of it was odd watching the documentary and seeing these things that I had already seen unfold in front of my eyes. I was at the Texans game with my dad and saw Smith suffer the injury, and man, that was tough. Watching him be carted off and the Texans and Redskins players all coming over to pay their respects, it was wild. Even further, Smith is later shown watching the Redskins preseason game against the Bengals and talking about how much he hopes to get back, and I was at that game with my girlfriend. Finally, the documentary ends with Smith making his eventual return to FedEx Field ahead of a game against the Bears. Darren and I were at that game with Smith in attendance. There are some crazy stories in the NFL that happen all the time, but to me, this one felt personal. Looking back, it's insane how much Smith went through with fans in the dark. We had no idea what was going on until his recovery was long over, and it's crazy to think that he nearly didn't walk away with his leg or even his life. Alex Smith went from a division-leading NFL starting quarterback to life-threatening condition in an instant. After 17 surgeries over 9 months, he miraculously landed back on the Washington active roster and participated in practice 637 days after his devastating injury against the Texans in 2018. The Alex Smith story isn't just a miraculous recovery, but his overall attitude and unwillingness to give up is an inspiration. And what's even crazier is Alex Smith's story isn't over yet.